Hello, I'm Omar Sallam and this is the Product Live. Today we have a very special guest. I consider her one of the elite of product management world. She is a coach of coaches and she's a renowned author. She wrote two of the most important books, I think, in product management. The first is Strong Product People, that was published in 2021, and just recently she's just released Building Strong Product Communities. Please welcome with me the elite, the strong Petra Wille.
What a lovely introduction. Thanks so much.
It's a small introduction. I'm not very good at introductions yet. I'm still, warming up with the podcast. But
Loving it.
I honestly think that your insights are really valuable and really important in the product world. And it's not just me saying that. All the industry greats are always saying that about your books and about your contributions.
Glad to
And
hear.
I'm really happy that we're having this conversation and to host you on the Product Live.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you. So again, it was a very short intro. So I would like to ask you to introduce yourself a bit more to our audience.
So a bit more about my background. So really briefly, I'm
Yeah.
a trained engineer, one could say. That's what I studied at university.
Mm-hmm.
And I early on discovered, or basically my colleagues early on discovered that I have this talent to talk to the clients and the customers and the users. And they pushed me doing that a bit more. And that's how I ended up in, back then it was called project management roles, to bring back
Yeah.
the requirements to the teams. That's
Yeah.
how I started my career back in the days. And
Yeah.
from
And
there,
manage the backlog.
we even not yet
Not
called it
even the backlog.
backlog.
Okay. Cool.
No,
Wow.
it was prior to backlog times. But from there, I found my first product role. I got familiarized to terms like backlog and all the Scrum methodology and working agile in many, many ways and all these kind of things, right? In various companies, I tried to learn more about product management, became a senior product manager at some point in time. I was doing B2B and B2C products, so that's pretty unusual. Not everybody has, kind of the luck to do both sides. So that was really cool for me to see how is it if you have like 12 million users and it's a B2C
Yeah.
business, and how is it if you have like 26 corporates that actually maybe spending the same amount of money with you than the 12 million users in the other company. So that was
Mm-hmm.
a quite interesting stretch. And then I made it into product leadership role, became head of product and the managing director of a startup / scale up at some point in time. And from there I went into first interims head of product roles
Mm-hmm.
that were, these days we call it fractional CPOs and all these kind of things. But back then
Okay.
it was like grown-up companies that said like, we want to step into new business ideas. We have ideas. It's super vague. Maybe you could help us find product market fit. So it was kind of a 0 to 1 product situation, but well
Mm-hmm.
funded. So not with all the pressure that usual startups have. And I just helped them to create these kind of little startups one by
Mm-hmm.
one, plus helped organizations when the head of product was on parental leave, for example, for a longer period of time. And once they came back, people said still like, what I really enjoyed, I'm really happy you're back, chef, boss. But what I really enjoyed when working with Petra was the one-on-one conversations, because she was so focused on my career development. And she was always asking what I'm currently curious about and what I'm learning and how do I improve, how I do product. So then it became a coaching role for some of these former clients, where they said like, okay, why not come back and have these coaching conversations with our product people once in a while. And the last 4 years, I've been solely working with people running product organizations. So you can call them
Mm-hmm.
heads of product, chief product officers, product team leads. And I help them to up their people development game. So it's a bit of a meta role. So whenever they I need to build this product organization, how do I hire? How do I retain the talent that I've got? How do I help them develop? How do I up my product management game? How do we create a product culture that is
Mm-hmm.
actually sticky, and when ideally people come knock our doors and say like, hey, I heard you're a great product company, can I join? Which makes hiring so much
Mm-hmm.
easier, right? So that's kind
Yeah.
of things that I'm helping product leaders these days with. And that's either in group coaching settings, so team coaching. So if there's a leadership team, a team of 3, for example, directors, then sometimes we have like team coaching going on, and oftentimes it's one-on-one coaching that I'm doing.
Okay. And how did you use that to write your first book about building strong product people?
Yeah, so the honest answer to that is, to some extent, all the freelance people know they need to find their topic. So what is
Yeah.
the thing that people are kind of associating with the name Petra Wille? And I was
Hmm.
always a bit on the, okay, what could it be? And at some point it was like, hey, it's actually the people development. Colleagues, peers, and even clients pointed out that it's all about growing product people and making sure that they kind of get better in what they do, and that they improving their craft, and that they're sharing this with others. So again, other people pointed me in the right direction. I was like, yeah, this really resonates with me.
Hmm.
And I don't scale well, so I could only coach that many product leadership folks and
Hmm.
help them improve their people development game. But that was not a scalable approach. So I wanted to help more people, and
Yeah.
then a book was it's a cheap thing. So people now could buy it for, I don't know, $25. It depends on the marketplace where you're ordering it from, but around that price tag. And it really helps you if you're in a leadership role to first of all define what does good look like for you. So what do you think is a competent product person? And then
Hmm.
really use that in all situations like hiring, onboarding, performance reviews. Plus, the book talks a lot about how do you coach people on certain topics, because we have this product management evergreens. And even if we think all product people are super good in time management, they often are not. And
Yeah.
yeah, and product leaders need to help them get better, for example, in basic things like prioritization or time management, or hypothesis driven product discovery. So all these kind of things I'm talking about in the book, and I want to help product leads get better, making their life easier, basically. So that's was the idea for the first book.
I have to tell you, when you were talking about that, I kept thinking about all the other discussions that we could have about building your personal brand, how to start writing a book. Like, I think we could do like a series of episodes, not just one, on different topics.
Yeah, maybe I'm
Uh,
coming back.
yeah, I would love, to discuss that with you, if we ever meet at some point. But yeah, thank you for giving us this insight about what the book talks about. And I would like to start our discussion gradually, relevant to the structure of a company. So since you are a
Mm.
coach of coaches, and I want to start by
I'm
by,
more
by
a
the
coach of
smallest
leaders. Sorry, but I'm
cost
more a
of
coach of, yeah.
coach of
I
leaders.
yeah.
Yeah,
I try
apart.
to
Yeah.
I try to not coach. I coach product coaches if they're internal product coaches. So this
Okay. Yeah.
becomes more
Yeah.
and more a
Yeah.
thing. Then I'm a coach of
Yeah.
coaches.
That's
Indeed. Yeah.
that's what I meant.
Yeah.
So if we're starting, the first step of the ladder before
Hmm.
reaching to the top of actual leadership, if someone is like an individual contributor right now,
Yeah.
and they are trying to prepare themselves for their first people management role, whether they're senior PM or they going into GPM and going into the management track, uh, what would you advise generally, on how to start developing someone and preparing for the first time to be a coach to someone else?
Yeah. So there's several things that they could do, I think, and it really depends on the company culture and the company context, right? But given that the product person in this organization to some extent is responsible for the product strategy,
Hmm.
that definitely is step number one. So if you are an IC level product person and not yet responsible for your product strategy, that's actually the first thing that you want to apply for, to have a more strategic impact. Because if you're stepping into a leadership role, that's definitely part of what you need to do is work more strategic. Look
Hmm.
at the longer term horizons and plan a bit
Yeah.
further ahead. So that definitely is always my first suggestion. Are you working strategically already? Then that's check.
Hmm.
If not, then that is the first thing that you want to do, and that is maybe by applying for a more strategic initiative within your organization where you're able to do this more strategic work. Sometimes it's just like telling your boss that, hey, I think I'm ready to take some of the strategic concerns off your plate, and I do the first draft, and then we can have a conversation about it, right? So whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, strategic, yeah, things and
Exposure.
questions,
Yeah.
exposure, that's actually the first thing that I recommend people to do. And then another thing that is in many organizations rather simple is be more active in your internal community of practice. So if it is a small product organization, it's 5 to 10 product people, and you're the most senior person in the room, then try to help others to get further along with some skills that they're having. Help them in their capabilities building. And that could be whatever. Maybe you attended a
Mm-hmm.
conference and bring back your insights and frame it for their context so that they can understand, like, this is actually how we could apply some of Teresa Torres's opportunity solution trees within our organization. Because that is
Okay.
often something the junior people struggle with. They
Mm-hmm.
read all the books and they see all the frameworks and they want to use all of them, but they struggle to see how this could be helpful to them in their current context and if it can be helpful. So this is something a senior person could do as well. And then share some of the things that you're learning. So if you think that you're rather good in creating outcome oriented roadmaps, then maybe that's something that you want to share with your colleagues. And that's something that you maybe could run a small workshop within your organization about these things. Or if your product organization is too small and
Mm-hmm.
it's maybe 2 product people, then you still could go talk about how you're doing things elsewhere. So maybe a meetup, maybe a product tank, something like that. But
Mm-hmm.
start sharing what you learn so that first of all, people see what you're doing, understand, okay, that's what Omar is famous for to some extent, right? And then they see that you're really, lifting others.
Yeah.
And that is definitely something that most of the companies want to see in leadership positions as well, that you're able to help others grow. And you can do this through community work. And mainly, I think that's the easiest way how you could actually be doing it within the company and outside of the company. Both is a possibility. And then you could
Yeah.
apply for onboarding new colleagues. That oftentimes helps you to understand a bit more about, okay, this is how we set expectations. And
Mm-hmm.
this is the important things that people have to learn when they onboard with our company. So that definitely is something that you could do and volunteer as well, even without any leadership responsibility attached. So that's just like 3 ideas: work
Yeah.
more strategic, help others grow, through usually community of practice work, and the third one is help people to onboard with your company.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, that would allow a person to like train the muscle of how to communicate to others and aim to coach them or to
Yeah,
transfer some knowledge or skills to them
yeah,
on practical basis.
exactly. And if I would need, so what, maybe one thing that I forgot that I would like to add is the art of giving feedback is something that
Yeah.
one could practice early on as well. And that's a super important thing in the leadership role.
Mm-hmm.
So are you able to deliver task related or behavioral related feedback to others? And that's
Mm-hmm.
something you could practice with your team.
Okay.
So how does your feedback land? Maybe you need to change the way how you provide people with feedback so that
Mm-hmm.
actually they are able to hear what you actually want to tell them, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's something that you could practice early on in your career, and you don't have to wait for a leadership mandate to start giving good, radical, candid, helpful feedback.
Yeah. And how to structure that feedback actually also to be actionable and to give them not just opinions about how you're performing, this person was performing, but with actionable things that they could proceed to do in order to develop. And I
Exactly.
actually like very much that everything that you said is actually actionable. So thank you so much for this. So that was a starting point. Let's take it like a couple of steps after that in that hypothetical person's career, and I would like to focus on 2 areas that you mentioned in your book, the last 2 chapters about train for excellence and build a great culture. Um, and the first question that I have here now, someone is product leader at some level. They're managing a couple of senior PMs, like with bigger scopes and so on. How to make sure that all of these SPMs are being engaged and motivated to manage, this extended scope. Maybe sometimes their scopes are not correlating, but still they're in the same track or in the same group, and they are trying to work on different things. But that leader's job is to keep them motivated, engaged, and all of this guided towards one direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I added this to the book because in my coachings, I often find leaders focusing on either hiring and onboarding new people or
Hmm.
developing the rather junior product people to a certain level.
Okay.
But because of time scarcity, we often forget that we have all these senior players around, right?
Hmm.
That are
Yeah.
oftentimes carry most of the load of the product organization's delivery value, right?
Yeah.
They're kind of really important pillars of the organization on of what we do and what we deliver and what we commit to. So I always make sure that I walk my leaders through the question of, okay, how do you make sure to keep the senior product people engaged? And um, first of all, if you start doing that and put it in your calendar, it's maybe a quarterly thing that you just have this 10 minutes blocker in your calendar that says like, am I caring enough for my senior people? Is there something I could do for them? That already
Hmm.
helps, right? So that already helps. And sometimes ideas come right after to your mind, things that you could do the day after. Maybe it's just like talking to your senior people and see how they're doing. That's may spark some ideas as well, right? But what often results from these conversations is what they're lacking is either again, because the thing is, promotions not happening that often anymore. It usually happens more
Yeah.
often in the beginning of your career, but then let's face it, at some point you are like the platinum product person in this company. So where should you be promoted to
Yeah.
unless
Yeah.
you want to go for the leadership track? Maybe you're
Hmm.
already group product manager, maybe you're already the most senior title. You're holding the most senior title an IC level product person could have, right? So no
Yeah.
promotion inside. Then there still could be a raise, obviously. That is something that could happen. And another thing that often makes sense to kind of assess is, are my seniors able to experience the mastery that they have gained over the years? Because hello, Daniel Pink, he says like what everybody's striving for is a mastery, autonomy, and purpose, right? So that is something
Yeah.
that you do with your senior PMs as well. So do they still see purpose in the things that they do in the mission of the company? Ideally, yes. Hopefully, yes.
Hmm.
And in the purpose in what they are kind of contributing to the bigger picture. Do they feel enough autonomy? That is something that is changing throughout your career, right? The more senior people need way more autonomy in what they do than your junior folks. So are they having enough autonomy in picking the battles and picking the bets they want to work on? That is a question that you could look into. And then are they experiencing mastery? And how do people experience mastery? It's when they're teaching others. It's when they help others. It's when they educate others. It's when they onboard others. It's maybe when they run community of practice events. All these things is something that senior product people could do if you allow them to do so, because it's
Yeah.
a time investment, let's face it, but that's how you keep them engaged with what the company actually does. Some maybe want to run a product tank and become an external meetup organizer. Maybe that is in the favor of your company because it helps you with employer branding, right? So it's not
Hmm.
time wasted. I think it's time well invested, but these are the conversations that you want to have with your senior product people to see like what you can do for them. Yeah. And then still, you still could assign them to more strategic topics over time, right? Because there oftentimes are opportunities opening up for them to work closer with senior executives, to work closer with the board, these kind of things. That's another topic. So you could kind of task them with harder problems to solve, so to say.
Yeah, so for sure, as a product leader, the key fundamental to be able to achieve or do all of that is to build a layer of open communication and trust within your
Exactly.
group, that everyone is like free to share what they think, what they want, and how they want to develop. And
Hmm.
also, from a leader perspective, you're trusting them that you know when you give them more space and more autonomy, that they're actually going to do the right thing,
Yeah.
and even if something bad happens, still within this, atmosphere of trust and confidence, that it's okay to happen. And the main thing is that we analyze and we understand why it happened, and why, how can we avoid it in the future. So having this level of like, or establishing this safe zone for
Yeah.
everyone, I think, is the key also for all
Yeah.
of that, right?
I totally agree, because otherwise these conversations lead nowhere. Exactly. You're right.
Yeah. Okay. And like, if the case happened and a team started losing the sense of purpose a little bit, maybe the business is shifting, maybe the customer needs are changing, something is happening, and they didn't like shift fast enough. Maybe sometimes you need to reorganize things. Reorgs happen, change of scopes and change of structures happen. So that leads to the other question that I wanted to ask about the positioning of the product org within, how the product org is placed and designed within the overall company structure. Whether this company understands, for example, the value or the relevance of being product led, or it's operations led, but product is positioned in different, structures. How much would that affect setting a culture and an environment for product generally, and to be able to grow and empower and give autonomy to product people in this context?
Yeah, so to answer the question, so the first thing people need to do to answer these questions, or that question for themselves, is what industry are we in and what is our predominant business model? Because not every company that has product management folks around
Mhm.
is 100% a product company, because oftentimes maybe they develop internal software for users that the company is having, and you need product managers to do so, but the company is doing something completely different. Some of my pharma clients, for example, right? The pharma clients, what they're selling are drugs
Yeah.
and maybe kind of treatment solutions even. And the product people that they're having, they're taking care of the internal software that they need to build to be able to run clinical trials.
Okay.
This is a complete, this, for example, is an organization where product management maybe is not the heart and core of the whole company. Then where should a product be placed is a completely different conversation than when you are a startup and you're a B2B SaaS company, and the only thing that you do is caring about product led growth. And
Hmm.
then should product management be attached to the CEO? Definitely yes. Should it be
Hmm.
in the other case? I don't think so, right?
Hmm.
So it really depends on what products you're delivering and what your predominant business model is. What are you selling? And is the products you are working on the core of what you do, or is it a supporting function to some extent? And still, whatever the answer is, you still want to balance it with the other functions that usually come with software slash hardware development. I haven't done too much hardware stuff. When I do some sensors plus software clients. I haven't done solely hardware companies, so that's my disclaimer here.
Okay.
Um, but if you're more in software development, you still want to balance the functions of technology, design, and product. And to some extent, they
Of
need to
course.
have an equal say or an equal seat at the table. Um, so you need to have these departments kind of on eye level to some extent, or at least their leadership folks should be on eye level. That's another thing that you want to make sure that that you're balancing the forces. Let's put it
Hmm.
like that. Yeah. And then in some companies, it's just like organic growth, right? Some companies have like, hey, we have our user research team attached to the CTO. Is that wrong? I don't know. That is kind of a case by case
Okay.
conversation that you need to have, and you need to learn more about where they're coming from, what they currently want to achieve, and where they're headed. To say like, yeah, I think it's not ideal in your situation, or yeah, for the time being, that's perfectly fine. Because let's face it, there are too many reorgs happening all the time, anyways.
Yeah.
So I usually try not to advise people to just because a book says, but UX should be located closer to product, do a reorg because of that. If it works for you, it works for you. Then don't do the reorg just because a random book tells you so. Yeah, but still,
So
if possible, find good balancing in all kind of the people that are working on the product.
and continuously assessing that and analyze if there's friction and how the work is being done and how
Yeah,
different teams are working together would help you understand what is the best setup. Okay, so now foundations are laid to, like, how the bigger functions are balanced together and so on. But again, as a leader for like a very big business unit, you have many product teams and so on. How to make sure, or what are the factors that you take into consideration when you are sizing the scopes of different teams and like trying to balance how they work together on the actual product scopes itself.
yeah. That again is to answer that context agnostically is nearly impossible to do it in a good way. You would need
Yeah.
to have more context about the company and the challenge, their business, the industry they're operating in, the people they have and the talent, the maturity of the product organization, and the maturity of each product person within the organization, because I think it depends on exactly these factors to create a setup that actually works for the organization. But so in general, um, you want to split. So what I usually, it's a bit of a checklist that I have in my head when people
Yeah.
approach me with that question. And the checklist that I first have, a kind of, okay, are you having various products? So is there a portfolio?
Hmm.
Because then we oftentimes, the first split we make is by product market fit or by product, so to say. Because usually a product is tackling one problem or a series of problems for a particular customer group. So that makes a nice scope for one team. Then you could
Okay.
say, like, yeah, but this product is way too big for one team to handle. Then the next question is, okay, but is the product actually solving problems for one user group or several? Marketplace products, for example, you oftentimes have two user groups, right? The seller and the buyer. Then that is another natural split that you could make to say, like, okay, one team focuses on the needs of the seller and the other one focuses on the needs of the buyer. If you still say, like, yeah, we have this marketplace product, we already split seller and buyer perspective, we still need to split more, it doesn't scale well enough, what else can we do? Then it's steps in the user journey. Then it's
Okay.
maybe buyer growth, then it's the onboarding, then it's the engagement, then it's the retention, then it's maybe churn prevention, whatever it actually is. But you could split teams and each team could have a goal. Yeah, connected to this parts of the user journey and then focusing to improving that. But if you do this, then you really need to have a solid product strategy in place that creates alignment across all of these teams. And the
Okay.
teams really need to understand which role they play in this bigger picture, because your customer does not care that team A does the onboarding and team Z does the churn prevention.
Hmm.
They have one single customer experience, right? So if you need to scale that much, then invest a lot in your time into alignment, into strategic work, into providing people with directional clarity. Where are we headed? Why are we going there? What is their contribution? Connecting the dots. So that's a bigger leadership challenge.
Definitely. So speaking about alignment and strategies, one of the most things that you deal with day to day, whether you're an IC or a reader or a VP of product, is conflicts, right? So, like, you know, conflict happens in all teams, whether within the team, within the track, within the whole organ, especially as you said, as the company scales, goes bigger, it deals with more complex use cases and initiatives and things that they're trying to resolve. The business model gets more complicated, and that's a main cause for having more conflicts between, multi-layered and multi-leveled conflicts. So how would product leadership across a company or organization that is already scaled, has that much big of a scale, would make sure that they are supporting conflict resolution and conflict handling in a way that would still remain positive, and productive, pushing for productivity, that it wouldn't actually block development. It would maintain the positive culture and the atmosphere across the company.
Yeah, so many things to say about that. So first of all, there's fewer conflict in companies that are that having this directional clarity and that are driven by goals, right? So if everybody understands what you're currently trying to achieve and there's not that much assumptions and opinions, there's not that much conflict usually, because then the goals, the shared goals and aligned goals and understood goals really help to eliminate a lot of this conflict. Because if then two people have an argument, they could always go back to say like, okay, wait, but what is our current goal? What is the shared goal that we're currently trying to pursue? And if that is the goal, which route are we going, right? So that is one thing. So if you are in a
I
situation,
guess that's the perfect state, because you would always, almost always, have that stakeholder that like goes, no, I like, okay, we're doing this because we have this shared goal, and then still they are opinionated towards something, or something else they're considering, or maybe they're trying to work in a different way,
yeah,
and not only in product, but maybe in other, business stakeholders that are working on operations or other business functions that you need to collaborate with, come
yeah,
up with strategy with, but still they understand things in a different way, they work in a different way, they try to optimize for different things,
yeah.
and that's what causes these kinds of
Yeah, and it's a
conflicts.
great assessment. And if that is so, first of all, if that is, let's say the product organization is aligned, right? You have goals, everybody understands what you're doing, but you still have this conflict and friction with your sales team or market team, for example, then I
Mhm.
would say then it's not a shared goal. Then you should spend way more time in aligning with them what you're currently trying to pursue and involve higher up leadership,
Okay.
because then there is no directional clarity provided that is spanning across the departments. And
Hmm.
that is a leadership job. So it's
Hmm.
not, you can influence that from the bottom to some extent, but it's not your job as an IC level product leader to silence the salesperson because they don't get what your current goals are. So
Yeah, yeah,
that is a leadership task, right? So if that happens over again, if there's friction between departments, go up to the pyramid and say like, hey, leads, you need to figure this out. We have constantly these discussions that sales is kind of to some extent understanding our goals but not really supporting our goals, so maybe we should work on shared goals that we and the sales teams are
yeah,
pursuing. And that's not something that you could drive. That's something that you could escalate to your leadership team and say like, hey, here's friction, or it's even more than friction, it's conflict. I can't
yeah.
solve it, help me solve it.
And it's from leadership perspective, it's super important that leaders understand that they have, need to establish clear communication pipelines or whatever
Yeah,
with their ICs and the whole org that they're managing, to be able to detect and spot these friction
these,
points early on,
yeah, exactly.
because if we just come up with a strategy and say, okay, these are the organizational goals and everything, go work with it, and then all of this happens, but they think that they have already done their job, everything is, a done deal for them, then they wouldn't really sense what's going on, and
Mm,
by the end of the year nothing is achieved, everyone is fighting, everyone hates each other,
yeah,
and you lost your organization.
yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah.
So only fight the fights that are your fights and then manage upwards if it's stuff that you can't win. Then you need your leader, the help of your executives or leadership team to set goals
Hmm.
that kind of are aligning the people towards this shared goal. And if that's not possible yet, then leadership has work to do. It's actually pretty common that leadership has work to do. I often
Yeah,
find product people being in an okayish position. They saw there is no product strategy existing. They created a product strategy, but still for them it's super hard to cling it to a company strategy. or
Yeah.
even a company vision, because that's not really existent. Implicitly, yes, but there is no written, aligned, shared, repeated company strategy or company vision.
Hmm.
But then through responsibility to speak out, manage up, that's an important part of the job as well.
Okay. Yeah. That's a clear message on how to be able to structure things a little bit, and how, as a leader, you are addressing issues that you're facing or trying to set a way of working
Yeah.
for the whole organization.
Yeah, and by the way, there is a nice, so you could call it joint escalation. So
Hmm.
what is really, so if you have this conflict and argument with your sales representative, then pair up with them and go to both of your line managers
Yeah.
and tell them what your conflict is all about and how you could not come to a conclusion, decision, solve this thing, and what would help you. Because this
Yeah.
aligning in conflict and say, like, yes, we agree to disagree and we need help to solve this conflict, and then
Mm.
escalate together, there is so much power and beauty in that. So that's usually my recommendation. So it's not you against the sales representative, it's the
Yes.
two of you going to leadership and say, like, we need help and guidance.
Yeah, establishing the culture of collaboration generally, like making sure that all different teams and all different functions understand that we're not debating, or we don't have like different opinions because we're just opinionated and that's it.
Yeah.
We just are trying to work together to find the best way and how we could achieve common goals. And as I was saying, I find that also something that should be fostered from leadership generally,
Yeah.
on not just setting ways of working structures and so on, but making sure that they're communicating continuously to all levels on how to do small things, like simple conflict resolution, and how we work together, what to do in different situations, and so on. Like, from time to time, having some focus on micro details on how
Yeah.
the work is supposed to be done. I think this enhances a lot of the overall experience and culture in an organization.
Yeah.
And from that, I want to go to an article that you wrote. First of all, the title was like really catchy: "Fixing the shipyards, not just the ships." And like I really like that metaphor. So that was the first thing. But in that article, you talked more about having these systematic solutions. And I think we've been again discussing the same thing, and being focused on the last two chapters of your book. But is there anything else related to that article that you would like to add that contributes into how to use these systematic solutions and that ecosystem that you're trying to set up as a leader to guide building actual strategies for the company moving
Yeah.
forward?
So as you were saying, it was a blog post that I wrote for the leadership folks out there, right? So if you are already in the leadership role, and you often find yourself fixing smaller things for one PM after the other, right? So they come with the little monkeys problems and
Mm,
really kind of say, like, Omar, I have this one particular conflict with my salesperson. Can you fix it? Or this one person is bad mouthing me behind my back because they don't understand the prioritization of my backlog. So the baseline of the article, yes, you could fix each one of these things one by one, but oftentimes it's not helpful. So oftentimes
mhm,
what is helpful in your leadership practice is to step back and think about, okay, is it this one person that does not find any time in the calendar for any backlog writing because they're so busy? Or is basically everybody in my product organization way too busy? And is it something that we should deal with? Maybe it's training that everybody needs. Maybe it's a bit more guidance and coaching on time management practices. Maybe it's just more awareness around the topic. Or maybe it's mandates so that I say, like, hey, feel free to cancel half of your meetings and tell everybody I said so. Depends on the situation, right? But that is something that I wanted to highlight in this blog post, because I so often see my coaches fix issues one by one and not looking at these problems from a higher altitude to see, like, okay, is it really like an individual thing that I need to solve, or is it a systemic issue that I need to tackle? And does it consume more time to tackle the issues on a systemic level? Oftentimes not. Oftentimes it's 2 or 3 meetings that you need to have with colleagues, and it's either your IC level product people or you just talk to people higher up and try to fix it on a higher level. Oftentimes the time investment is similar, but you're solving more than one case, and that really helps you free up some time in your calendar over the time because it all piles up otherwise.
Yeah. Like I was thinking when you were explaining that as maybe sometimes I don't know, like you tell me from your experience dealing with leadership, but sometimes they might with the intensity and the load of everything that is happening here and there and all the problems and so on, um, they forget that they are now at a higher level of leadership and they get consumed back into their IC personas where I have to jump and dive in and to solve this
Yeah.
specific situation somehow. Um, Not always realizing, because like maybe that's why it happens. Like you always have the bias to action, like, okay, let's go solve this right now, right here, and handle it. But like I think they need to remind themselves every now and then that there is, like, the more holistic approach and the more holistic scope that they can look. They have the eagle eye view right now, and they
Yeah.
need to focus on like spotting the patterns as you were suggesting, and that the actual smaller products that are within their scope, as these are not their products right now. These are the SPM's products, and so on. Their actual product is the ecosystem, the structure, the this set of
Exactly.
teams. That's the product that they should be applying product mindset on, and the
Yeah.
product practices that you should actually run discovery on what are the problems that are occurring, and having all these things that you used to do as an IC on an actual digital product that you're building. Now you should be applying that on a product that is a team and a structure for a company,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and
So
ironically enough, that's hard, and it is something that everybody needs to be remembered of every once in a while, right? Because all of us have this tendency: if somebody comes with a problem, we want to help them solve the problem.
yeah.
Um, so it's a natural tendency of everybody, and I think to some extent it's beautiful that humans want to help humans. But your part of your job, as you were saying, right, is kind of creating this ecosystem. So
Hmm.
that's why you need to have this, I call it muscle memory to some extent. So whenever somebody
Okay.
comes with an individual issue, then you need to think about, but I'm not here to solve this individual issue, I'm
Yeah.
here to work on the ecosystem.
So we've been talking about the structure that you could bring to the organization, and the things that you are sharing, with, as practices or things to do to
Hmm.
help leadership to grow their organizations. But I also want to ask, from your own experience and your own exposure, what kind of markets that you have worked with, and whether there are differences in how to apply this and how to consider this in different markets. Maybe like if we talk about North America and Europe, maybe like generally it's the same standard of working, or at least the same mindsets. But if we compare that to different markets like South America, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, um, did you get exposed to that kind of diversity in different markets and how they tackled this, and what would be the differences specifically when we're talking about places where product management is not as mature as in Europe or North America, and also this might vary between the sizes of the companies. So like we have two different variables here.
Yeah, so my exposure, so my clients are mainly based in North America and in Europe with a emphasis to Scandinavia to some extent. And
Okay.
yeah, so that's kind of the clients that I'm working with on a regular basis over the years and have deep insights into. And the rest of the world is more like many, many meetups. I spoke at many, many meetups all around the globe, attended conferences, talked to people in coffee queues, right? So I think I
Hmm.
have a bit of a more international picture, but anecdotally. I'd say. So
Yeah.
that is the disclaimer to setting the ground here.
Okay.
Um, for me, so most of the countries, no, basically, let's put it like that. The US always thinks they're way more mature than the rest of the world, and the rest of the world always thinks that they're way behind the US. This
Okay.
is not my experience, product maturity wise. My experience is whoever is able to read English content has a similar maturity,
Okay.
because information is traveling that fast. A lot of product people are really generous in sharing what they learn. There's a lot of literature out there. There are a lot of conferences sharing all the talks. So
Mhm.
all the people that are able to consume content in English, and that
Mhm.
applies to Scandinavia, that applies to Europe in large
Yeah,
extents,
yeah.
it applies to whole
Basically
India,
the whole world. Yeah.
so most of the world. Um, I think that they have a similar product maturity. There
Yeah.
is a big difference in what type of companies that are working for, because definitely in Europe it's harder to get venture capital. It's still harder to to start a company, and to so therefore not that many people work for really like radically growth optimized startups and scale ups. It's more old economies that people might be working with. It's maybe more transformation topics than it is in the US, but still there are massively big and old corporates in the US that need to be kind of transform towards a more product mindset or more product thinking, right? So there's not massive differences. A lot
Hmm.
of the differences that I see are in countries that struggle to consume a lot of the English content, right? And
Okay.
that's where, for example, that's the countries where I get this ask from: can you translate the book to Portuguese? Can you translate the book to French? Can you translate the book
Yeah.
into several? It's currently a strong product people gets translated into traditional Chinese, because of
Okay.
they maybe not prefer reading English books, right?
Hmm.
Um, and so that's where I see some differences in product maturity. And some markets still compensate by having great communities. So I have been invited to really great community events in Brazil, for example, where
Hmm.
maybe they're not all reading the latest English product management books, but some of
Hmm.
them do. And they then are really gratefully sharing with their community what they learned and what they tried and what works for them. So it's a lot about, are people able to read the latest stuff, and are they then brave enough to try certain things? Are they able to apply it in the companies that they're working for? Are the companies willing to tolerate learning? Because it always takes a bit longer if people want to use a new framework or learn a new skill or something like that. And not every culture is valuing learning, experimentation, and even failure equally well. So that's maybe cultural differences as well. So what is the culture around learning and failure and trying new things? But that's basically it. And then the teams are so. I've worked with teams in Berlin where there was no German person in sight, right? Because people have
Yeah.
been joining the company in Berlin from all over the world. So you have so many diverse teams with so many cultural differences that it's even hard to tell, because is that a German company? I don't know, right? Maybe they're based
It's
in Germany.
yeah. Yeah, definitely product management is an international culture now. And like I think we could summarize what you said is that for everyone that they think that they are in a place or a culture that is holding them behind a little bit in product management, that's not true. And it's relative to everywhere in the world, as long as you could access knowledge and try to d- self-develop
Yeah,
and have this um you know sense of community and sharing also what you learn, try to learn from other people and so on. This will basically balance your existence in anywhere in the world.
yeah,
And what I wanted to ask about here specifically is the because for example, let's take the Middle East as an example. And I come from Egypt, and I've worked a lot in Egypt before moving to Europe. So sometimes, because Egypt and the Middle East is really a big playground for VCs, and when you're in this stage of startup and hyper growth and being funded with VCs, things need to move really fast. sometimes there is no enough attention to structure and building the teams internally in the best way possible, or
Yeah.
correcting your mistakes, because you are being pressured by needing to have speed and execution and speed and growth and
Yeah.
searching for results and so on. Also, you have very limited funding. Also, the some society pressures around you that are making people that, they focus so much on work and they're so consumed in a lot of stuff, like, these kind
Yep.
of like hyper dynamic environments that don't always give leadership the best opportunity to apply all of these practices that we've been talking about in this episode, and what you have in your books. So is there like a micro version on how to do this in a like this hyperactive environment, or what should happen here?
Yeah, so to me, the question really is, what are you opting in for when you're joining such a company, right? Because if you as a product person value well-oiled setup with enough headcount, with people on a high product maturity level that have done it before, then maybe a startup is not the right place for you to be,
Yeah.
right? So I think the important thing is you need to reflect on what you're actually looking for, because such a hyper growth startup where there's a lot of pressure towards goal growth, usually not so much profitability, that usually comes slightly later, or to
Yeah.
find product market fit, or to be ahead of the curve of your competition, all these so that's things that startups usually care about.
Mm.
um, that can create a sense of belonging and purpose, and it maybe is a sweatshop, but maybe you're having the time of your life there, and you're learning so many things in a really short
Of
amount of
course.
time. But if you struggle with being adaptive to change, and if you struggle to do things with your bare hands because tools are not yet there, then maybe it's not the right environment for you.
Yeah.
And so the thing is, could we tell these startups you're not doing it right, you should be doing it in a different way? Yeah, but is that taking us somewhere? No. That's the nature of the game of these startups. Is there is a lot of VC money, there is a lot of pressure. If you're looking to learn a lot of things in a very limited amount of time, maybe a good career decision. If you're already a bit more advanced and you know how a team should actually work. For example, in my career, at some point, I really fell in love with having an interaction designer close by, so that we really could think about how actually is the solution going to look like. And even if I'm an okayish design person, it is not the same speed with not having an interaction design person, right? And at some point I knew, like, okay, wherever I go, they need to have enough money to at least hire me
Yeah.
some engineers and an interaction design
Of course.
person, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But maybe the startup doesn't have the money to do so, and maybe the product person needs to do the design stuff as well, and maybe even some coding.
Yeah.
And you learn a
But
ton
yeah.
from that. But is it ideal? Maybe not, right?
Yeah,
So that is.
definitely. Definitely in this environment you have to work with what you get, and you have to work as
Mhm.
hard as you can to make sure that you continue to exist. But from the perspective again of product leadership, whether there is actual product leadership or product is being inspired by the CEO, if it's still like, at a very early stage, is there a way, with all of this speed and pressure and everything that you're adapting with, to make sure that you make account for how scalable this company could be, and try to minimize the amount of rework that you have to do, as you, so like building foundations properly since a very very early start, even though you have very limited capacity of effort or money or funds or headspace to do that, to avoid, or to mitigate things being complicated when you grow, and then you
Mhm.
have to like bring down the temple and build it up again, and do all of this.
Yeah. So I seen more teams doing too much premature optimization than the other way around.
Hmm.
So I often see teams having the tendency to build too much legacy and already do a lot of gold plating and create and adding a lot of things to the code that actually nobody will ever see or use, just because maybe in the future we need this functionality, right? So
Okay.
that's what I see more.
Hmm.
than that I see teams doing the bare minimum and really kind of winging this product and see how it crumbles while people are using it. Um, but both, I've seen both, but I see more of the latter, so more of the gold plating, more of the premature optimization. And that's more a conversation that you need to have about its investments. In the end, it's investments. So how much
Hmm.
time can we as a company invest in this one particular thing? Do we think we need, is that the core of the business that we're currently building? Is that something that is here to stay? Or is it an experiment that we run and we're not yet sure if anybody is using that at all in the future? So these are the conversations that you need to have. And ideally, you're having these conversations when you are still in opportunity assessment. That's how I call it. So that's the
Okay.
phase when you have an idea and
Mm-hmm.
you're not yet sure if you want to invest in discovery.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all talking about delivery. It's just this initial phase where you say like, okay, there's an idea. Can we call it opportunity? So do we see potential? What kind of potential do we see there? Do we think it makes sense for the company to call this an opportunity? Because oftentimes customers have problems. We see these problems. We know it's problems. We could solve these problems. But from a company perspective, it's just not viable because there's no business
Yeah.
case, for example. And this initial opportunity assessment, hopefully, to some extent talks about how much effort can we dedicate towards this problem to solve it, and that hopefully talks about is it a core of our platform? Do we need to make it rather ruggedized? How important is quality? How important is maintainability, enhanceability, all these kind of, we call it non-functional requirements because it's
Yeah.
not adding functional to the software, but it is kind of work for the engineering team to take care about all these things. And that is conversations that are hopefully happening.
So like the key to startups, early stage startups, hyper growth, is that they should just be focusing on how to do prioritization and discovery in the best way possible to determine how to like guide their investments and their
Short learning
efforts that
cycles.
are,
Yeah.
yeah, and short learning cycles, of
Yeah.
course, and just focusing on getting that right, the short learning cycles, the discovery and the prioritization would definitely eventually help them in their growth, and
Yeah.
then eventually they will have more capacity to set things in a better way and to work in a better way, whether for the overall structure as it scales or for developing the
Yeah,
product
and
itself.
again, think about the shipyard. So at some point you want to create principles, engineering principles, product principles, design principles. So what are the things that we always want to keep in mind when we are working on the product? And things like maintainability and adaptability of code could be
Hmm.
principles that your engineering team at some point decides to put into written principles. That's our minimum level of adaptability that we want to have in our software, right? But that's conversations that need to happen. Not something I would advise them to do in week one, but maybe when you're 1 year into your startup journey, then maybe pause and reflect and think like, okay, have there been decisions that have been, is there a pattern in decision making when it comes to adaptability, maintainability, enhanceability, all these kind of things?
Okay, great. um, I know we're over time. I just have one question, if you
Please go
could.
for it.
Okay. Okay. um, okay, so that's great advice. And as you were speaking earlier, since we're talking about different communities that would be trying to develop and trying to share with each other and sharing the learnings and so on, I want just to jump into like getting a glimpse and a sneak peek of what your new book, your latest release, building strong product communities, is talking about. Like from the title, I assume that I would expect talking about scaling product craft culture, building on it to start building an actual
Hmm.
product community, and that also might apply inside or outside the a company. But like that's just I guess from me. I'm dying to validate this hypothesis with you. So could you just please give us a sneak peek on your new book?
Sorry. Of course. Um, very happy to do so. So strong product communities is all about the knowledge sharing between product people. So it is not, some people assume that it's about how you, as a B2B SaaS company, for example, build a community around your product. That's not what I'm talking about. So it has nothing to do with customer contact and relations. It's all about internal learning. Because again, I thought so many years about how can I help product leads to up their product leadership game, and people development was one secret sauce to some extent to free up their calendar and to really help them to be great product leads. And another thing that I saw some companies do is they really run successful communities of practice, oftentimes internal product communities of practice, where the product people, without the leader even being involved, really share, hey, I tried two jobs to be done. That's how I tried it. That's how it was helpful. That's where the limitations are. Or I read this new book. That's what I learned from it. Or I want to read this new book. Is there a book club forming? So can I read maybe with my peers? Or should we attend this conference together and see what we could bring back, right? All
Yeah,
these conversations are oftentimes happening within product communities of practice, within successful organizations. And then I have a lot of my coaches that have never heard about the concept, that are so unaware that there are communities of product practices out there, global ones, public ones
of
that one
course.
could join. I so often said this kind of, but why are all your product people not attending any of these external product meetups? And then the
Mm.
leadership person is like, there are product meetups? So I actually wanted to get this idea out to the world to say, like, yes, product people are, we all of us love to share what we learned. There's so many strategy pieces out there, or this is how I created my KPI tree. Whatever it is, go look for it. Product people love to share and help others. And I wanted to be more, shine a light on that topic a bit more and say, like, it's a thing. You learn from your peers. You can help your peers learn. That's how you experience mastery. So it's a win-win-win-win-win situation if there is a vital
Of course.
community of practice. And the book is just highlighting, so it's highlighting some interviews that I conducted with people that are running a product community of practice. For example, Nazrin from Google was so kind to share how they are running their European community of product practice. And there are other interviews as part of the book. Then I conducted a survey amongst 100 product people and asked about their experience with community of practice. So what do they think works well, and are there rituals that they particularly like and that they would recommend others to maybe run if they have a community of practice. And then I added a lot of my insights from client work and clients that set up a successful community of practice. So what did they do differently than the ones that have this kind of super energy consuming, not
Yeah.
well running communities of practice? So that's actually what I put in the book. It's a small sister of Strong Product People. It's a rather
Mhm.
short read. I think you could read it in an hour or something like that. It's thin.
Okay, that's
Um,
that's a really good thing. Yeah,
yeah, so it's
I always struggle
short.
with long big books. So
Yeah, and Strong Product People is long, I know, but
yeah,
Strong Product Communities, that's a short one.
yeah. Okay, that's really great. I really like how you put that because even personally, I always think and say that product management is a science and art that is like it's homegrown. It actually it got formed out of need, and then people started
Yeah.
teaching each other and um, uh, developing each other on how this could be done in the
Mm,
best possible way. I think it's one of the mm, science or art development stories that just recently happened. So we got to see how it developed and how it evolved, not like much older existing sciences. And as you said, that definitely all product people they all like to share. We like to talk about our stuff, right?
yeah.
We like to
Yeah.
evangelize. We like to show off and see, okay, I did this and that happened and so on. That's a part of the craft, anyways. So you would I think you would always find product people that are willing to help each other out of nowhere, support each other, even if they don't really know each other from before. And that's a unique characteristic about this industry, and what I personally really love about this doing this job
Yeah.
and being in this community.
I totally agree. That was really nice last few words.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We could see that, that you actually agreed to do this interview with me as soon as I reached out to you. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed doing this episode with you. I think it was really rich. and I'm positive that a lot of people would find a great benefit from
Hopefully,
it.
yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much, Petra, for giving
Shukran.
the time. Laugh. Thank you so much. Um, yeah, really, thank you for being here and for your time. Um, well, that was the end of discussion with Petra, but I would encourage everyone to read her books if you haven't done that. As you see, we have discussed multi levels of how to build strong product people, starting from building your own self and preparing yourself to coach other people, and how this could resonate to product people and product leaders in different levels and different situations. There is definitely much more to learn from the books, so make sure that you enrich your knowledge with that. And that was the end of this episode with Petra, but I hope that we're able to do other meetups with her. For now, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and to Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Yeah, exactly. And follow the Product Live on LinkedIn and Instagram to know all the other updates and what's coming next. Please share also in the comments if you want us to discuss specific topics that you would like to hear about. Thank you so much. This was Omar Sallam from the Product Live, and see you next time.